discrimination, privilege, guilt, diversity, victim, aggressor, integration, civility, respect, racism, hate, justice, all lives matter, right, wrong, reverse racism, law and order, social justice, privilege, guilt, discrimination, civil disobedience, Black Lives Matter, due process, race relations, segregation, affirmative action, all that. Racism sucks. Nationwide protests in recent months have rekindled roaring public discourse about racial inequality in America. George Floyd's death in police custody on May 25th, it let loose a groundswell of public rage about the way Black Americans are policed, but it also sparked a deeper conversation about the way they experience all aspects of modern life, whether it's underrepresentation in college attainment rates or overrepresentation in COVID-19 hospitalizations. Extensive academic research and data collected by federal government and researchers. I know how some of you feel about the federal government, but they've documented numerous ways that Black Americans experience life in the U.S. differently from our white counterparts. It is called systemic racism because it's ingrained in nearly every way people move through society, in the politics, in policies, in practices at institutions like banks, schools, companies, government agencies, yep, those two, and law enforcement. I gotta bring it here. As a woman of God, be pressed to do everything in love. Racism ain't love, period. Yes, I split the verb. It ain't right and it ain't love. It's amazing that today is the first day of Kwanzaa celebration. It's a cultural celebration with umoja being the first principle that symbolizes unity. And that means to strive and maintain, to strive for and maintain unity in the family, the community, the nation, and race. And this includes our churches. Unity, unified, united, all of that. We have a non-melanated sister as our guest tonight. She's ready to speak up and speak out against racism. And I really enjoyed my conversation with her today. It was super cool. There are many, many women out there much like her with a story and, yes, an awakening. And they are speaking out against racism and speaking up for unity and, simply put, speaking up for love and understanding. So we welcome all of our sisters here tonight. We're going to have this candid conversation. How y'all doing?
Hey,
y'all be.
Hello.
How are you guys?
Hey, Shelley, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm so doing well. Hey, Minister Kaylee, what's happening, my sister?
Hey, God bless you. How are you?
God bless you. I'm doing well. Hey, Amanda and TP and Whitney. Yay. We got to do some smiles, right? Because this is a difficult conversation. As we said earlier, racism sucks. And that means it ain't good. It's really bad. I was talking to Shelley earlier, and it was a really cool conversation. We were supposed to be on the phone for a few minutes, and we all know how it goes. And so, Shelley, I know you've got a lot of things we want to talk to you about today because being a non-melanated sister, I know you told me today you had an awakening about some things that you didn't realize until 15 years ago, maybe?
Right. Yeah, so I feel like I sort of took the, in the Matrix where they take whatever it is, the blue or the red pill.
Yeah.
I forget what color it was. I feel like adopting Black children was like taking the pill of the Matrix, and it opened me to a world I didn't know existed. And I thought I was a progressive white person. And I really, really wasn't. So, and I slowly started to have access. My friends who were people of color started treating me differently, including my friend Tawanica, who invited me tonight. And that's when I realized that my friends who were people of color filtered themselves pretty consistently around white people. And that was really just heartbreaking to realize that here I float around in the world pretty obliviously. I don't filter myself around anyone except for maybe men sometimes, right? Because, but I thought, wow, my brown friends, they got to be on 24/7 because it's a white world. And that's when I thought, okay, all right. So Sundays, maybe that's why we're so segregated on Sundays. At least when you're worshiping, you get to take the veil off and maybe be who you are. And so I want to be really clear. I'm still remarkably ignorant, and I don't know what it's like to be a woman of color. I'm just continuing to hopefully learn. And parenting my kids, they were 3, 6, and 9 when they came to me. Now they're 15, 18, and 21, and I have a 2-year-old granddaughter. And so, things like when my daughter was giving birth, I didn't sleep because I know what the statistics are around Black women and healthcare. And my kids have been involved in the justice system, and I think assertive is the nice word.
Wow.
Yeah, when it comes to education, law enforcement, healthcare, just all the systems in our country are full of systemic racism. I guess I'll leave it at yeah.
And you know what? I got to go way back. You said a whole mouthful, my sister, and we really appreciate it. I mean, I see the heads nodding. I'm going to start this question off because you said something that just it like literally, like I don't know if you saw me, kind of like I felt like I was in an earthquake. You said we have to filter as women of color. What you've realized is that we've had to really filter ourselves, and we come in and you can tell a difference. Mm-hmm. Now that the veil has been taken off of your eyes because you've been raising 3 children of color. And so you can see the differences. You can see the way people probably looked at you in the beginning and treated you a little bit differently. And then you began to understand a lot more is what I'm hearing. So I'm going to throw that out there for the women to talk about. I mean, I know what she just said is real because sometimes we do kind of turn on a different switch in front of, non-melanated, white people. And she's right. And I could hear her saying that kind of hurts me. Like, that's horrible. Why do they have to do that?
I have to say, this is actually something that I mentioned, I think, in one of our past conversations. I said that if you had a child, right, and your child had an illness or a disease, you would see how important it is for you to learn every little single thing about that disease or that illness because it's your child. Mm-hmm. And to hear you say that is just kind of like a confirmation for me because when something is important to you, you take steps, you take action. So I am very happy that you are experiencing this with your children. It's only going to help you grow closer to your children and really understand how they're going through their lives day to day. It's a beautiful thing to have understanding.
It is. And it's a beautiful thing for you to adopt children of color and say, you know what, now I see something completely different. I'm like, I see. And having a friend, having TP, mm-hmm. It awakens your relationship with her is what I heard you say too.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think we were friends. We worked together, and I had so much respect for Tawanica for so many reasons. And I want to be really clear. It didn't hurt me that I realized that my friends had filtered themselves. I was sad for them. So I don't want to make me the center of that conversation. I want to be really clear about that. So yeah, I mean, Tawanica had to. So don't think I'm an angel or that I'm some sort of like super nice person. Most of the time, I'm not even a nice person. I was just naive. So when Department of Human Services, you fill out this terrible form, like you're filling out an a la carte menu, right, of what you will accept. And I got a call from someone who said, Ms. Academy, we don't get healthy white babies in foster care. And I said, that's fine, because I don't want babies and I don't care what color they are. And I didn't care what color they were. But I also at that time was probably one of those I don't see color people, which is horrific to me. Like, I'm so ashamed to say that out loud right now.
Like
I was one of those. I was a well-intentioned white person who was like, I don't see color. And so I got two Black girls, and I really did think it didn't matter, because I thought, well, I've got a house that's heated and cooled. What else do I need, really? Because I was that naive. So then when it came time to do their hair, Tawanica, we had lots of conversations, because there's so much culture wrapped up in that. And I actually, after a period of years, ended up having business cards made up that I handed out to people, because I was accosted so often by people who felt like their opinion was the only opinion. And it was after, and my kids' hair was always natural and it was always taken care of. But there were a lot of women who felt like I didn't know what I was doing because I was white and because their hair was natural. And so I started just, when women would walk up to me, I would just hand them a card and we would walk away, because they would say terrible things in front of my children.
Oh, wow.
about how my kids looked terrible and how they weren't, taken care of. Well, my kids were horribly traumatized to begin with. You don't get into foster care easily. And so I took a cue from some, I don't know where I read it, some Black women who passed for white back in the 30s and 40s, who had cards made up and handed them to people when they said racist things. And so that's what I did, and said, these are the things you could do with your time and money besides spend it on your hair.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What are your thoughts on that, Minister Kaylee? I see your eyes. You've been like, I love it.
Did I just offend everyone?
No. Really?
No.
No. That was not, you were basically passing out cards saying, instead of getting into some type of heated discussion or argument, is that what I'm taking it? And you were just passing it out like, stop it. Yeah,
just as a de-escalation move, because it just escalated every time. No matter what I said, it became this conflict, and I didn't want my kids exposed to it, and so
exactly.
And it was because my girls didn't have like braids with a bunch of stuff at the end, and so some people think that their hair, because it was in twists or puffs or whatever, that it wasn't done. And so, I had the cards made up and said, actually, the card said, my kids were born beautiful, so were you. Please start acting like it.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
And then on the back, it said all the things you can do with your time and money besides be at the salon for 6 hours on a Saturday.
Experience that.
Wow.
And again, you know what?
Wow.
That was some that was, you did that in love, okay?
I did do it in love.
Don't say that was in love. Because we know you can use some expletives, okay? I learned that today.
I think that's a great approach, solutions-based approach to the situation. And it worked for her. I think, we have to approach it with a solution. Don't just have a comeback. Don't just, go to tit for tat. It's pointless. But having a solutions-based approach.
Well, and my oldest daughter almost punched someone one day. She was about 12, and that's when I was like, I'm done. We're figuring something out. And so honestly, it was probably a little too in your face, but it was something we could hand out and walk away. And so
Well, I understand.
my daughter,
I definitely understand that you needed something to protect your children. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm hearing. It's like people were randomly coming up to you, attacking you for the care of your children in front of your children.
in front of my
So,
kids.
in
Mhm.
front of your children, that's a whole nother
That's a whole
nother level.
That's going to be next week, like for real.
That's a whole nother
Like
level.
for real. I don't think
Yeah.
we'll be subject anytime soon, Mr. Kaylee.
So the whole point is I had friends like Tawana. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just have another question, and I know the ladies have questions as well, so they may have to wave their hand at me. But how has it been with your white counterparts? I know we talked about the neighbors and we talked about maybe friends. How have these last, if we talk about racism or we talk about stereotyping or we talk about love, I mean, how has that been for you, and how have you handled that with your white counterparts, being that you adopted 3 Black children?
I'm fortunate because my family, who are all white, and my grandparents and my mom have passed in the last 5 or 6 years. My family was all accepting. I won't say the same for some of my foster adoptive friends, whose families were just, I don't even know how to describe them. So I was fortunate. My family was very welcoming. Pardon?
No, I did the beeps for you.
Oh, yeah. My family was welcoming and great about my kids. Honestly, my friends were fine, or if they were not fine, they didn't tell me about it. They kept their mouths closed. I will say the biggest issue probably I've noticed is my son is my youngest, and he's smart and charming and attractive, and people just loved him when he was a little boy. Loved him. He's the cutest. And then, now he's 15. And I've been really pretty pointed in my comments about when exactly did my son become a thug to you? So he was this beautiful baby. He was this beautiful 3-year-old, roly-poly 3-year-old. And then he was 6, and then he was 10. And he was so cute. Milton's so cute. And then now I know when some of my white friends look at him, I know they think of him as a threat. I know they do. Because frankly, I would have. I'm very open about the fact that I was raised around a lot of white people in a white suburb of Oklahoma City. I didn't even meet a Black person until I went to college, which is pathetic. Okay. And I would throw myself in front of a truck for my children without thinking about it. But I still, when a young man pulls up next to me in traffic, my reaction is to lock my doors. And that's
unconscious bias.
It's unconscious bias, exactly. And I've had
conscious bias.
Pardon? Say it again.
Never mind. Go ahead.
So I say that I very intentionally say that out loud, and then I've had people call me privately and say, "I'm so glad you said that because I thought I was just a racist piece of trash." And I'm like, "No, you got to call it out. You got to acknowledge that you have bias. It's what you choose to do about it that matters."
Love it.
We gotta stop pretending. That's what makes me so frustrated. People think they're racist if they have those thoughts, and that word is so loaded. And so they just shut down. They don't even think further, instead of thinking critically and solution based about, wow, I have these thoughts now. What do I do with them?
Yeah.
And so, I would say that's where I think my friends have possibly struggled is, now my son looks like someone who's threatening, but really he's just a boy. He's a boy just like their boys, just like their little blonde boys. And overestimating the age of Black children is something that white people do all the time. And so I'm pretty loud about, he's
Very loud.
especially very loud, especially, in the news and stuff. Yeah, in the news when we see pictures of teenage boys and they're portrayed as thugs because they're Black boys, I'm always like, he's a boy. That's a boy you're referring to. He's not a man, and so I think that's probably top of mind right now.
Denise, can I say something?
Please.
I just wanted to say this to you, Shelley, not to switch the dynamic, and we get right back on it. But I'm gonna be honest, Black people have the unconscious bias too, with locking
everyone does.
When we got right. We have it too. Like the water, when these beautiful Black young boys are selling the water for $1 on the side of the road, and if I'm on Cascade or something like that, I get off that exit, you push that button. But it's that's a whole nother topic. But it's just amazing how it even transcends on our own, and those are our people per se. We're Black and they're Black, and we're doing the same thing.
I think that goes to the media, that goes to what has been ingrained in us, that goes to what has been taught to us. And like I always come back, we're only about 60, 70 years, I don't know how many years out just from, civil rights, guys. I mean, like we all have these, like I remember when you talk about a doctor, the first thing that comes to your mind is a white male as a doctor. When you talk about a nurse, the first thing that comes to your mind is a female. You talk about a teacher, so that's when so you have all of these things and I love the fact that, like you said, you have to acknowledge that they're there so that you can be aware of them when you see that that's what is blocking, whatever conversation you're having, your interaction with someone. You have to recognize that and go, okay, no, don't think that, you're being unfair right now. So I appreciate you really being honest and transparent about that. And that's what I've always loved about you, even though it may hurt, even though sometimes I didn't want to admit it. It was like, no, that's what's happening here. Be honest and be real with yourself. That's what's happening. And like you said, filtering ourselves earlier on. I think about that. We've had that whole conversation. You don't want to be perceived as being ghetto, but when you're around your friends and your family, you let loose, and you split those verbs, you use those double, triple negatives, and you just, and that's there. And we have to accept that. We have to be it's part of who we are. It doesn't mean that we are less than or right. And so I appreciate that, and I appreciate you, my friend, always being so vocal. And I mean, you fight for any underdog. I mean, it's not just the racism thing with Shelley. It's LGBT. I can't get the letters right, but just anybody. Racism. Discrimination against women. All of that. So I've loved that about you over the years. You always stood up for what was right, even though it was difficult. And
Juanica. Well, I have a lot of privilege. I have a whole lot of privilege.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, and to me, that's God. To me, that is that's respect, and justice is pretty important. To me, love is fierce. It's not just kind of going along to get along. And I'm not overtly religious, but I do feel like I've been given a life for, not to sit around watching Netflix. Although I was watching Netflix earlier today for
wonderful.
Yeah. I want to say one thing. We had a police shooting here a few years ago that was just awful. And Mr. Crutcher, I don't know if anybody saw that in the media. It was here in Tulsa. Mr. Crutcher was shot by a woman police officer. And I remember watching the video and thinking, that woman is terrified. And I know that she's terrified because I've seen that look on lots of white women's faces. I've seen it on my own face. And it's sad to me that we can't, the way that that whole thing was handled, it was handled poorly. And we never acknowledged, okay, she shot him because she was terrified. Not rationally at all. None of the other officers around her shot him. And I just wish we could have an honest conversation about that instead of lawsuits and pretending that wasn't what happened. You can look at her and know that she was irrationally afraid of him and shot him dead.
I gotta tell you, that in itself is a whole nother conversation, because we're talking about law enforcement at this point. We are talking about what trainings, what mindset the law enforcement is allowing to represent them at that point. And I used to work with a lot of children, and there were some programs in Connecticut that tried to bridge the gap between police and children in the community. Needless to say, it wasn't the most popular program. This was years ago. Not a very popular program. You know, basically the kids that they got were considered at risk, which is another conversation to have in another day. You know, so there are systematic problems in the police, you know, that need to be addressed as well. So the systematic racism that we have going on in this country runs deep.
It does.
Across many platforms.
I gotta look at that whole Crutcher. You said Crutcher?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember.
I think we got to take a solution.
Look it up is also because there's always so many different views on these things that happen, Shelley, and I'm never going to give a free pass to anybody that, and I don't know what surrounded this case, but to anyone who shoots someone that does not have a weapon. That, you know, if they didn't have a weapon, if they just looked like they were scary or looked like they were just out of control, but they had nothing but their hands and a hoodie and a t-shirt or whatever the case may be. And then because everybody's so afraid, and that's happening a lot, they're so afraid and they panic because they're Black or Latin or whatever the case may be, and they shoot them because they look like a thug.
Right.
And categorized as a Black. My son is fully, well, he was a full dreadhead. 6'4", 300 pounds. But now he's got a really cool, he's cut it all off, he's shaved on the sides, and he's real kind of his natural knotty on the top. He says, Mom, I'm growing my dreads back out. But one of the reasons why he cut his hair was because he's been profiled so many times.
Oh my, that's rough.
And that's unacceptable. That's a whole nother conversation, but I'm so not for police to go, I'm afraid, that I was fearful of my life. If the person had nothing, they didn't even, if they had a water gun or a you know, what do you call the taser things, whatever the case may be, it's still not going to kill you.
Right. Well, and if you watch the video of the incident, there was a helicopter hovering overhead, and one of the gentlemen and the officers in the helicopter said, "He's a big bad dude."
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Those kind of things, those are systematic issues that need to be researched.
It is systemic.
I think we again have to take a solutions-based approach with that too. We all can get to learn our chiefs of police, our deputy chiefs of police. If you have sons, take them, get to know them, schedule meetings to get to know them, so that they're not Black family after Black family, church leader after church leader. We need to get to know the chiefs of police. We need to get to know the people in charge. Schedule an appointment. I met with, we were protesting here in Smyrna, I didn't have the energy to stand in the hot sun and protest with them, but what I did have energy to do was stand next to the chief of police, talk with him, and asked him, what changes are you guys making in light of all of this? You're helping us with this march, but what changes are you making? And I like the answer that he gave, and he said, we implemented some changes 7 years ago that the Obama administration had laid out for us. I was Deputy Robert Harvey, I think it was his name, Chief Deputy. But meet with them and ask them what approaches, what solutions do you have? Bring them solutions, bring them ideas, bring your kids to meet, sit down and meet with. I'm sure they would be glad to. If they're not, then meet with the mayor.
There you go.
I just have to finish by saying, like, that program I was talking to you guys about, it did target at-risk children, the children that they considered at risk, but it did help them to know what a police officer's standpoint was. Like, there was conversation, and I'm a big advocate for communicating to help bridge gaps and to help solve problems. So in that light, wonderful. Bring the children, bring all the children, not just the at-risk ones. You know, bring everyone, expose them to what that side looks like, what those responsibilities are, what's going through their heads, what's going through their minds, because that's only going to start the process to figuring out what the issues really are. Because if there's no conversation, there's going to be no way to break down the system to know where they are going wrong.
You know what? You just said a mouthful too, Amanda. I mean, you ladies, Wendy, whoa. I mean, yeah. So that goes back to what Minister Kaylee and I talk about a lot as well, is having that conversation in church. A lot of times, you know, right now everybody's virtual church, you know, but it should be those conversations should be happening in the school. You're right. And not just quote unquote at risk, you know, because that's part of systemic racism also. I mean, how do we define racism? I mean, systemic, at risk, but it needs to be a constant communication in churches. It needs to be a constant communication at the dinner table. It sounds like Shelley's been having that conversation a lot with her children because she's had to have that conversation. Okay, these are looks that you're going to get. This is what's going to happen because she's white, raising 3 Black kids. She sees it. She's got to have those conversations. We as melanated individuals have those conversations too, but we have to amplify them in church, in schools. Take some time. Those programs, if they're out there, I mean, have we met with the mayors and all the different officials outside of election time and had those conversations? What are we doing as parents? What are we doing about it? Are we going to wait till something else big happens and everybody goes, and we start having the conversation? Then there are a lot of conversations that are happening on social media. I think that we just have to keep talking about it and have the awareness here. And then I think one thing we should do, Minister Kaylee, is add resources, especially based on what Amanda and Wendy just said, and also Shelley and TP. I mean, we need to put resources up on our site, put resources online. Who are your local officials in these different states? How do you find that? A lot of people, I'm one of those people. I was like that. I didn't race to read and research things for a long period of my life, but now I will race to research things. Okay. So we could put those resources up on the next show, because that's what we're talking about, solution oriented. Shelley, real quick, what else would you like to say to our viewers about racism? What is your view on racism? What is your view on being unified and unity? What is your view on things that have happened? And what would you just like to tell people to do or stop doing? And what you got, girl?
Yes, I could talk for so long. I think that white people who have one foot in 2 worlds like I do have a duty to be a bridge. And so if it's very easy for my white friend, I don't want to say all my white friends, but it's easy for white people to think, oh, that person, here's my favorite. If that person had just followed the rules, he wouldn't have been shot, right? And honestly, I probably was one of those white women in my 20s who thought, oh, well, law enforcement is just doing their jobs. If those people would just do what they were asked, that, there wouldn't be any issues. So I think for people like me to say the same things that Black people have been saying forever, it's really not fair, actually. It's like for a living, I'm a consultant, and many times I say out loud what everybody else is already thinking, and I get paid for it, okay? So it's kind of the same thing. I probably say everything that every person of color in the room has said 20 times or more, but when I say it, I'm someone who looks like the white people in the room, and at least some of them can go, oh, okay, and begin to kind of bridge a little bit. And so I would hope for any white people who are listening, then who potentially have a foot in both worlds, that they would do the same.
Do the right thing.
I love that. Absolutely.
That's beautiful. Wow. Be the bridge is what she said.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable, but if you're in a position to do it and you know that you can, then you should.
Absolutely.
Everyone should be striving to be in that position to bridge the gap.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be better if we do.
Yeah.
Better. I put a challenge out there to all the women. You've got Black, white, Latino. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I mean, but we women have our hands in so many things, and I know you hear me say that all the time. And if women would just take a stand and bridge the gap about racism, about, if you've got your foot in both worlds, like Shelley just said, I mean, we know what we go through as women. I mean, come on. Speak up, speak out.
That's right.
Be the first, be the second, be the 1,000. I don't know. It's all about love.
We need it. We have to. We need the Shelleys of the world to speak out. We have to have you. We can't do it by ourselves. We just can't.
We can talk with our church leaders as well and put the pressure on them to do more. Do more in teaching and leading us in this area, because if they're silent and they're not doing anything, I mean, it's past time for them to take the lead on this.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
as we see in this season too, it's about the lawmakers. Who are we appointing into these systems to make these changes? So it's being active in our communities and voting. And really having our voices be heard. I mean, we all know about what's happening in Georgia right now. It's that state. It's that state.
Yeah.
Three recounts. That's where we're at right now. Everything is in the balance in Georgia. I already voted.
I did too.
I sure did.
Me too.
And speaking of voting, once we vote, then what? I think I always get get a little emotional about that, because a lot of times I feel like we vote, but then what happens after we vote those? They're just one person and maybe a team of 20, 30, and they have all these things that they promised or overpromised. And a lot of times they underdeliver because of resources, people resources. And so it goes right back to the circle of, Shelley said, being the bridge, individuals. Wendy said, the churches, Minister Kaylee said the churches, I heard you, Amanda, TP, you saying the school and around the table and all that. I mean, it has to be something that keeps going before another endless another beautiful life is taken, or another person is not promoted because they're Black, or another person is not, they're stereotyped, or the bias, because they're Black, or whatever the case may be. It's so much bigger than voting, I think, because we say a lot.
I love one of the viewers actually typed in the chat that we need everyone to use their platform on every level, no matter your color or nationality.
Yeah.
Tara nailed it.
You nailed it, Tara. Thank you.
I agree. Can I comment on that? Do we need to take a break, or am I good?
We do need to take a break because we only have about 10 more minutes. We'll take a break, and then after we come back, Shelley, we want you to respond with your comment.
Thank you.
Hey, so you know I got to do the commercial, y'all. So the Empowered Woman conference virtual event is coming to a computer near you on January 16th from 12 until 4 p.m. If you are ready for a comeback and you're ready to hear from some amazing, confident, bold women, you got to be there. You got to be there. 2020 has been something else. So 2021, we got to take it by a stronghold. And as you see, the title and the theme is She Rocks 2021. So she's going to rock spiritually. She's going to rock healthy. She's going to rock in business. She's going to rock in relationships. Tickets are only $25. You better get them because we can only hold so many of us. Okay? So we need you to go to www.impoweryourpower.com. It's right there. It's not I am power, y'all. It's impoweryourpower.com. Please register right away. If you don't want to come, we've got a section there where you can gift a ticket to a sister, okay? So we want everybody there so we can have it a grand time, live virtual event, 12 to 4, 1/16/21. Yay. So that last question we had up there, I know Shelley wanted to respond to this one, I believe.
Yeah, and thanks for letting me comment on this. So I have been asked to run for office. I can't tell you how many times, probably just because I'm loud. And I always say no for a couple reasons, but one of which is I know that I have more influence from outside the system than I do within the system. And so I'm spending the next year, I decided about 30 days ago that I'm spending the next year to build a 501c6 organization to help parents and kids like mine. My kids, very long story, my kids have mental health issues, and in Oklahoma and many states, when kids hit a certain age, they run out of resources and end up in the juvenile justice system. And then in some states like Oklahoma, the parents are sued for their parental rights. So the short story is I did everything I could for my kids. And when my oldest hit a wall, the DA in my county came after me and tried to terminate my parental rights. And I was not allowed to talk about it because of the privacy laws. And so I'm building, there's no lobbying group that is out there advocating for good policy for foster and adopted kids. There just isn't. So I'm focusing on that, building that advocacy group over the next year. And I think that I can be much more effective that way. I will say I also help people campaign. I know my city councilor, and I worked really hard on her campaign. I know my state legislator. I worked on her campaign. I know my state senator. He and I don't agree. We're in different political parties, but he knows that I will follow through, and he knows what his goals are, and I will support him when I can. And so I think it's great to vote, and that's awesome. And by the way, I've sent money to Georgia. It's great to vote. It's great to vote. But for me, that is just the very tip of the iceberg. Please get involved in the electoral process and change legislation, change policy. Help your elected officials understand what good policy looks like, because they don't have the resources often to do that on their own. So if you can write legislation for them and hand it to them on a silver platter, you have a much better chance of getting it passed. And so I hope everyone listening will get really engaged and go door to door, drop literature, make phone calls. We really are privileged to live in a country where we can do that. And so I hope we'll all consider doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I want to look at
Definitely.
these last couple of questions real quick. Minister Kaylee, if you got anything you want to add here. We have ladies until the people admit to being a part of slavery and systemic racism, nothing will change. And then we have Black people have been speaking up about racism forever and nothing has changed. Wow.
Well, but I agree. I mean, really, it's like, sexism doesn't go away because of women. Sexism goes away because men get a clue and start telling other men, hey, it's not okay to do what you're doing right now. Same thing. Racism only goes away if white people get a clue.
That's right.
And if Black people could have resolved racism, don't you think it would be gone by now?
Right. Wow. Say that.
I mean, come on.
Say that. That is so wow.
So white people have to understand what we have created. We've created a white world where we are the center and where we literally take opportunity away from everyone who is not white.
Wow.
In every system we've created for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so it's not enough to feel guilty about it. That doesn't really help anyone.
No.
So
put a sign in your yard that says Black Lives Matter and that's it. There's a whole bunch more that we have to do out there. Just put a sign in the yard to keep people away. You think that's going to save the yard? It really, there's so much more for us to do. I had to get it out of my system. Okay,
for
let
clarity,
me say
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. For clarity, you do have
For clarity, I do have a really large Black Lives Matter flag flying on my house in South Tulsa.
Yes.
So that speaks a lot. Okay, let me just say that. And let me also say, you're not just flying the flag sign or whatever in your yard. You are doing things. You are
taking action.
You have no idea how many lives you will change by just speaking up. You hear me? I mean, it reaches much further than what you could ever think, Shelley. And so we just appreciate you being on here. I mean, this platform is for this, and we also hope a lot of our young people are watching too, our younger, millennials and younger, because they are our generation of today. And so there's a lot more we can do, especially our white millennials, that can speak up. And
can I? I'm sorry.
No, do not apologize. You're good. Trust me.
So let me say though, I just want to be really clear. What I'm doing is literally the least possible thing I can do. I mean, me actually calling attention to systemic injustice. It's not like I'm fighting a war, right? I mean, it's literally the least I can do. So I just want to make it clear that I'm not some sort of whatever. I'm not some kind of hero or I'm literally doing the minimum. I did march and I do march and protest when I think it's appropriate. We had 1,400 people shut down the turnpike in Tulsa in this past year, which I realize in LA is just a Tuesday, but in Tulsa it's a big deal. So,
right.
But Shelley, I want to say.
Go ahead, Minister Kaylee.
I wanted to say that to me, it's not the bare minimum, because everyone's trying to do the things that's shining in lights and on the news and have all the followers. Everyone wants to broadcast their support there. But what you are doing, in my opinion, is not the bare minimum, because those are the spaces that people forget about. We forget about that right there, that's not being filled up. So that's just my opinion. I know you have your own, but I wanted to just bring that thank you for filling up that space, because everybody wants to be in the limelight and the glory, but you're filling up a space that probably maybe would be vacant if you weren't standing up to be there.
That's wonderful. I think you're right.
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't like to be the center.
Start. I see that. It says a sign in the yard is a start. I don't think we're saying, well, I'm going to speak for me. I'm not saying it's not a start. I'm saying I know people personally that put that sign, and it's a facade.
Right.
It's not. They've said it. I don't want nobody coming in my house, Denise. I'm gonna show that that's real talk. And so it might be a start. Okay. All I'm saying is I'm just calling you to action. I'm calling people on the carpet. There's a lot more for you to do, and I cannot apologize. I'm unapologetically me. I'm not going to apologize for putting it out there and saying we need to do more. I see some progression. I don't see we're nowhere near where we need to be. I shouldn't have to make my voice sound overly proper to get a job. I shouldn't have to change my name, to make it sound more like people that are non-melanated in order to get promoted or get a job. I shouldn't have to do those things. So there's so much more that we can do other than just putting a sign in our yard. Mm-hmm. Why don't you cover your car? If you want me to be impressed, cover your whole car with Black Lives Matter and drive around, go to work with it, go to the grocery store with it. Then we can talk about something that you're doing bold, really bold to make a difference. You know what I'm saying? And so that's all I'm saying. I got to put it out there. There's so much more that we can do to the people that are listening. So much more that we can do. There's
can I comment
every day?
Can I comment on that?
Yep.
So there are, to paraphrase Dr. King, progressive white people are kind of a problem. And so I've experienced in my world people who are progressive until it affects one of their buddies, and then they're not progressive anymore, and a lot of them are men. And so I want to say to white people, it's easy to be progressive from afar, but when I marched in the 1,400 person march, we called out the mayor and said, "Hey, mayor, we need you to actually step up and lead." And we were peaceful. We were, peaceful protest is the most American thing I can think of. And we had people, the mayor said that he felt threatened. Mm-hmm. Now, if a white minister was leading a peaceful protest and someone said they and their children felt threatened, people would lose their minds. But it was totally accepted for the mayor to say that he felt threatened by this minister who is the minister of the oldest Black church in Tulsa leading this peaceful march. And I will say a lot of liberal white people were on that bandwagon saying, "Oh, well, they shouldn't have done that. That was too much." And I'm like, really? Because Black people deal with too much every damn day of their lives. Yeah. And so do you want to talk about feeling threatened? Driving down the road, driving while Black, people feel threatened. And so don't tell me that you were threatened by a peaceful protest walking towards a neighborhood. So I hope that white people really continually question themselves and are constantly working to really put ourselves in the shoes of people of color and understand how we just do better. And that's how I will stop talking now.
No. Wow, love it. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you. We are gone way past time, and that's like super okay with me. Sounds like it's okay with y'all. Mm-hmm. This is like really good conversation. We have another question up there. I'm going to throw up there. We're going to throw up real quick. Do healthcare and race have something in common?
I mean, I think so.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yes. There's been a lot of especially when I went to college, I began to learn from my counterparts that were in school majoring in nursing. They were telling me about how the difference in, this is just one thing, the difference in a Black woman giving birth and a white individual giving birth in the hospital. I've actually heard personally some experiences where Black mother is crying out, "Y'all, I'm hurting," or this or that, and they may get shrugged off. Or there's a lot of instances where these women have died. So I've seen a lot of different things on social media lately with husbands, Black husbands, doing different initiatives to bring this to the light. they've lost their wives due to the negligence of others.
Mm-hmm.
And so I haven't personally seen it or had someone personally affected to me, but I've heard of the stories of the difference. And I personally have heard I believe, that it's everywhere, but it seems like it's more heightened in certain areas and communities of the world. But it is very prevalent though in healthcare, and then even going down to just getting the type of medicine, things that you need, totally different. Things that are accessible and not accessible to us. And then you can go even down to healthcare, even starts with the food you eat, not just going to the doctor, but starting with the food you eat. Why can I leave out of here and there's a McDonald's, a Popeyes, a Chick-fil-A, of this and that? But then when I go over to Buckhead, or when I go over to these other cities, there's the Whole Foods. There's all these different things. There's vegan spots. So healthcare doesn't just start with, you going to the doctor. It starts with what you eat, what we put in our body. And now we're having to go to the doctor because of the things that are accessible to us. Why can't we have the Whole Foods? Why can't we have this, that, and the third? And the psychology, I'm going to be done. The thing that irks me is the psychology of some of my Black counterparts is that some don't really necessarily care or feel that they don't deserve these nice, elegant places to eat. It has to be elegant, just healthy places to eat, period. They rather get a 4 for $4 than spend $10 on a salad at Chick-fil-A.
Wow.
And that is that psychology makes me sad, that the breakdown, that all of this stuff in the world and what we see in plaster is that we're supposed to have fried chicken and this and that and the third, when no, our health matters too. And that's all I got to say.
I want to add
Thank you. Go ahead.
Behind the scenes in medical and in the dental fields, and I've seen the racism of some of the doctors I've worked for. One of them, a white male doctor in Charleston, South Carolina. He brought his little 4 or 5 year old boy in one day, work with daddy, and walking down the hallway, he says to daddy, "Daddy, you got to see a lot of Black patients today?" So what conversations is he going home having about his having to see Black patients in his office? That's one start thing. The other thing was, I mentioned, I believe last time in the doctor, when he would come in an hour late and he may have had a Black patient waiting for him, but he would go see his other patient who has maybe been there 10 minutes. He would go see and acknowledge them first, say hello, have long drawn out conversations. How are you doing? Get started on them first and keep the Black patients waiting. So it is prevalent. I mean, so how is that affecting our care? I know I've been dismissed by, whether it's employers, your medical doctors. At least with your medical doctors, you can recognize it and find you another doctor. You don't have to put up with that. You don't have to pay those copays and have your insurance company feeding a racist doctor or a dismissive sexist doctor. I say take that into your hands and research and do better for yourself. Advocate for yourself.
Great point, Wendy, and great point, Minister Kaylee. I mean, we have to think about, we have to go back, this will go back full circle. There's a gentleman, I cannot believe I can't remember his name, that it was on one of our past Preach the Word shows, and he talked about that we can have in predominantly Black neighborhoods and communities, we can have the Whole Foods and the Sprouts and those things, but a lot of times we don't know how to make that happen. Like allocation of funds and what different building projects are coming, that because we are not tapped into, as I said, full circle, tapped into like what Wendy and Amanda was talking about as it relates to, the politicians and legislation like Shelley was talking about and what they're voting on, because a lot of times we're not tapped into that resource like a lot of our non-melanated counterparts are. And we don't know, we're not, a lot of times we don't know, or we don't want to know, or we didn't know we should know or could know, that those resources exist and we can have those same places without having to drive out, 20 and 30 miles to get to them, so those resources are out there. We just have to really, when we think about solutions, figure out, and again, this is from churches. I got to put it out there again. Our churches that are out there My own church and churches that I'm affiliated with, same thing. Those are the workshops that we need to be having. We can have them on Zoom. You know, we need to have those discussions about the economy, about economics, about business, about patronizing our small businesses, about eating healthy, not the fish fries and the chicken legs and all that. We got to talk about those things. You know, what are we eating for? You know, those things. It all comes with awareness, and this is the first start to all that, right? But we got to go back to that full circle. The people in leadership, i.e. us, i.e. them, you know, need our support as additional resources to get the awareness out there. So we know what our rights are.
And it's really important. Like, we have to take ownership of our change. We have to take ownership of it. We have to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form. We have to take those steps so that people know how important this is. This is not just a summer 2020 situation. This is the beginning of a long, playing the long game, the short game, whatever we need to do to get stuff done.
I love it. I love it. We're going to go ahead and close out. We have gone way over time. This has been an awesome conversation.
Great conversation.
That question that just popped up at the bottom is going to take about a good hour. And that is going to be for next week. Oh my gosh. So we really appreciate you, Shelley. And speaking out, we really do.
Thank you.
I am so honored to be asked. I appreciate you for inviting me and including me in the conversation. And quick note, I've done economic development for 25 years. Get involved in the economic development that's happening in your community, because that's where everything you're talking about happens. And that way you do know what's coming into your community and you can influence it.
Absolutely.
Influence is stop it or start it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're going to close out with the commercial again for the virtual event. And we look forward to seeing you all next week.